We're good to go. I'm going to introduce Stacey. So Stacey and her husband Mark run Tulla Native Nursery over at Wakool, which is sort of getting down towards the Barham and Swan Hill area, down towards the Murray. Stacey also runs a very extensive native nursery. And guess what, everybody? Reminder, it's Mother's Day on Sunday. Students, ring your mother. Make a note now, ring mum. And so Mark can't be here today because they are getting huge amounts of their beautiful floral displays ready to go out for Mother's Day. So, but Stacey's here, but her and husband Mark work as a team, and Stacey's here to talk about the Anameka Saltbush. And this is a saltbush that's been developed by CSIRO, so once again, tick to CSIRO. And Stacey's very experienced in the Anameka, so we're going to, and she's got samples on display over here as well. So I'll put Stacey on to tell you the story. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Sally, and thanks for inviting me. I do apologise, I'm only one half of Tulla Natives. As Sally said, my husband is flat chat back at work with staff, keeping things on track while I'm gallivanting around the countryside. Oh, you're right. I have no notes with me, but I am going to work off my slideshow, so I do need that. As Sally said, we have a floriculture plantation. So Mother's Day is the busiest the fortnight before Mother's Day is the busiest time on our calendar. But it's awesome that I could get across to this day. What is Tulla Native? So, as I mentioned, we've got a wholesale floriculture plantation. We have wholesale and retail plants for sale in our nursery, which I'll touch on as well. And we also offer on-farm contract planting services. So I'll just briefly mention our story. I am here to talk mostly about Anameka, but I'll just give you the spiel. Mark and I bought our little patch of land 10 years ago now, 9-10 years ago. It's only, I think, 280 acres. A little bit of cropping, but not enough to sustain ourselves from. So we looked at our area, and we sort of looked at our soil and what we have, and what do we enjoy? What can we do with our land? How can we work towards working for ourselves? And so we started with trialing growing flowers. So wholesale was always our main game, and in the process of filling up our plantation area for the floriculture industry, we began to cut costs. We began germinating our own plants. We thought we were pretty okay at doing that, and every year we did more and more. Eventually, locals around us started wanting to buy plants off us, and our nursery was born. The nursery quickly took over the floriculture plantation. There's a lot of labour, and all year round is busy. If you ask when our quiet time is, we don't have one. We sort of tick along with both aspects of our business, and they coincide each other really nicely. So that's just a bit of a spiel on how Tulla Natives was born. We started off quite small. We built everything from the ground up ourselves. So I'll break it down. So our plant nursery, we're a propagation nursery, so we don't buy anything else and sell. We grow what we sell. We collect seed ourselves, and we also utilise Murray Mallee Seed Bank and other local seed collectors to try and grow endemic species from locally selected plants. We think that's quite important. We've got a huge variety of potted plants, so we open on weekends, and you might want to come and get some plants for the garden. We grow wholesale tray stock plugs, so I did bring some today, so you can have a look. I'll talk about that as well. So we grow the wholesale tray stock plugs for re-veg projects, farmers that want to do shelter belt plantings, and we also support our own contract planting projects with that stock. We grow, supply and contract plant Anameka Saltbush, which I will get into later on, every year under a national grower licence, which I'll talk about later. We supply other nursery wholesale plants now as well, which is pretty exciting. We sort of freight wholesale orders all across, to most states of Australia now. So every year we've got a bit bigger, and we're pretty proud that we pump our plants all across Australia. Our nursery itself is open on advertised open days and also by appointment. We're not always there. We also go contract planting all over winter, and one day we might be there and the next we might be hanging out the back of a tree planter up north of Ivanhoe, so open by appointment. We're also a seasonal nursery, so we open up in autumn with supply and go all the way through until we shut down again at the start of summer for our busy propagating season. So we sort of started 7 or 8 years ago with a few hundred plants, and we now have the capacity to grow over 600,000 plants per year. So we're pretty proud of that. A million is the dream. Could be a nightmare too, not sure, but that's our goal eventually. So that's the plant nursery. Just a little bit on the floriculture, just because it is a little part of the picture. We started, I said 7 years ago there, but I think the first plants went in the ground 8 years ago. And we started on 20 acres with a couple of hundred plants. Everything's under raised irrigation. We're lucky enough to have access to water where we are. So we slowly expanded and supplied cut flowers and foliage locally whilst the nursery sort of started to gain momentum. So we've sort of done a bit of everything all at the same time. We've since expanded into wholesale supply only, so we can't do local supply. But just due to time constraints, we're so busy and just juggling the nursery, so we now do wholesale supply. We cut weekly and we send packed pallets to the Sydney and Melbourne wholesale flower markets to wholesalers that then on-sell at the markets to florists, which is pretty cool stuff. We've expanded this and we now have 65 acres under plantation with about 22,000 plants in the ground. We expanded last year and we've already started cutting from the new plantation, which is pretty cool. We reckon we've figured out how to grow stuff really well. So we're able to grow a lot of the WA species because of our soils and the climate. So we're pretty lucky we can grow some really nice stuff that people down south sort of struggle with. So that's a snapshot of the floriculture. So we offer contract planting services. So just a few points about that. Our planter machines, we've got two. So each machine has the capacity to put 10,000 plants into the ground a day. Now, that's on a really good day. We've actually, I think our biggest day was 12,000, but the weather was right, everything was right, the soil was right. I guess if I were to average, 7,000 to 8,000 is a pretty good average day for us, but we can do more if we push hard. Ground preparation for contract planting is absolutely crucial in most cases. We work really closely with landholders to ensure that by the time we come with our plants and our planter, that the ground is prepared to a level that we can do the best job absolutely possible because of the ground prep. And a lot of the time in a sandy loam soil, no prep is required, which is really good. We live where we live and it's predominantly clay soils. So most people with heavy soils do need to do a lot of work. You might need to do some summer ripping, and then obviously when you rip when it's dry, you're bringing up clods. So you might then need to work on your clods. You need a disc it. You might need to run the harrows over it. You've got to break it up. We need nice friable soil for our planter to work to its best capacity. We also have a 6,000 litre water cart trailer that we make available to all of our clients for free, so they can do some post-planting watering. Look, we have people that I don't want to water, we're too busy. Come plant, leave, whatever happens, happens. But if you're putting in 5, 10, 15, 20,000 plants, we really want to see people watering them in. We can't order the rain after we leave, but every single time someone has watered after we leave, you always get a better job. It just helps with soil contact around the root zone. It helps settle everything. Obviously, it's the best thing that you can do. So we really want people to utilise that. Our planters include an adjustable grater blade, so you don't have to use it, but it is a good option if we need to clear weed seed burden. You might also need to clear a bit of weed burden if you didn't do a spray. Obviously, ideally, we'd like people to spray before we come. There's also a deep ripper on our planter, which is really, we can use it or we can not. It just depends on the weather. We can play around with those settings. We've got big discs that actually turn up the soil and ensure good, and then the press wheels that come through at the end, sort of the soil that the discs fluff up, the press wheels push it all down nice and tight and just seal it all up really nicely. So as you can see in that picture, it actually leaves, it presses the plants down, but it leaves a water harvesting furrow. So if you're having to go along and manually water, that furrow is going to capture that water. And if we've ripped or used the ripper when we're planting, that water is going to follow straight down the rip line where the roots of the plant are and send those roots down faster than if you didn't do it. So, the planting machines are great, effective tools for larger scale projects. So we do have minimum numbers. It's not worth bringing out for a couple of hundred. Generally, we look at travel and time, and we generally do jobs sort of more than sort of 2,000 plants at a time, but our biggest job this year will be, I think last year we did 50,000 out at JBS Feedlot at Burraboy. I think our biggest job this year might be 35 or 40,000 Anameka at a property at Ivanhoe, so we can do bigger projects as well. I've already talked about the water harvesting furrow, but we plant a lot of Anameka Saltbush, but we also plant, our nursery, we grow a great range of local trees and shrubs. So we plant shelter belts, we do revegetation projects, you name it, we'll do it. So our planting calendar runs from roughly April, May, depending on when it wants to rain. And we run through until August. September is getting a bit late. You can plant in September, but you will be following up with more manual watering events because the weather dries out. Ideally over winter, that's the time to get them in. All of your root growth is happening over winter, so it might not look like anything's happening up top, but that's when all the roots are going down and following the moisture profile. And then come spring, if you've got really nice strong roots, you've got a nice big growing tree in spring. So that's sort of how that works. So we have the ability to travel and plant in many areas, which I've talked about. We've had really pleasing results mostly, and we've had minimal failures due to planning and learning from experience. So we have had a couple of dud jobs, and they were very early on in the piece when we first started. Ground prep, we were learning, and we went into a job without assessing the site first, and we said, well, we've got a ripper on the planter, it should be okay. And we probably had a 50%, this was near Maud, we probably had a 50% survival, which we didn't like that. We want to get better numbers than that. They luckily went again the following year. They had about a 95% strike, and we were so excited, and then the floods happened. So they unfortunately were unlucky to have 2 crappy years, and they haven't gone again. And we've all learnt from these things. Unfortunately, we can't control floods or the weather, but because we work closely with all of our landholders, we really do. We go and do a site assessment. We ensure that the site's right. We ensure that the prep has to be done, otherwise we won't do the job. We really want to see people get really good results. So we can't plant into wet, heavy soil. So if it rains, that's great. Let's go tree planting. But unfortunately, our planter chocks up with mud and it's a bit of a shit show. So we have to pick the right time and juggle all of our clients over winter. So we just communicate with everyone as best as we can. Heavy soils, as I said, require the most preparation. Loamy soils can be planted into with moisture present, which is really good. It can be raining and we can be on a sandhill and we can still plant, which is really awesome. Our aim is to plant seedlings really deep into the rip lines and into the moisture profile for faster establishment and growth response, which I did touch on before. As I said, we've got 2 planters and we can plant larger projects faster with the 2 machines. We've engineered one of the planters and modified it to self-drive the press wheels. So this does help when it is a bit wetter. If we're sort of in a job where it's a bit touch and go, this is that's the weapon we pull out to get that job done. So it's one of a kind. So I'm here to talk about Anameka. why do we grow it over here? Why are we growing it in the nursery in Wakool? First of all, hands up. Who has heard of Anameka before today? Who's familiar with it? Yep. So there's a few in the room, but it's good to see some fresh faces here. Anameka was developed by CSIRO, and it was selected and bred through a vigorous research program aimed at improving fodder options in dryland farming systems. So they said Old Man Saltbush is really tough and gnarly and a great feed source, but how can we improve it? That's pretty much why it come about. Anameka was being produced solely in WA by Chatfield's nursery, and it quickly gained momentum. However, due to costly quarantine regulations, it was hard for Chatfields to get it across to the eastern side of Australia. They battled. It was cost, it was effort, it was costing the clients too much. So they tapped us on the shoulder and said, "Hey, do you want to give it a go?" And we really thought strategically in our area, something like this, the whole area, we can all benefit from having it over here. So that's why we were pretty excited to get on board. This is our 5th year of growing Anameka now. We've got it down pat. We're pretty good at it now. And we've now supplied over 500,000 Anameka seedlings so far for the eastern side of Australia, and that's definitely growing, which is good. It's sort of, the first year we started with 30,000 and we thought, that's awesome, that's huge, that's cool. And then the next year it was 80,000, and then so it's jumped up every year, and it's a pretty popular product. So each year we've started to supply Queensland, which is really cool, all of New South Wales, Victoria, and South Australia, which is it's going to be a very strategic area for us this year as well, because obviously they're having some pretty bloody rough conditions. So with South Australia, we need to get plant health certificates through DPI, so we work with them, and they support us to get our plants everywhere, which is cool. We currently don't send to Tasmania. We're still navigating some quarantine stuff there. So Anameka, the basics. As I said, it's a CSIRO selected variety of Old Man Saltbush, so Atriplex nummularia. That's been bred and selected for the following reasons. So just before I go into that, CSIRO went around Australia and found all the Atriplex nummularia plants, and they chose, I think they trialled like 60,000 or something. It was some ridiculous number like that. And they grew them in trial plots, and they watched what the sheep preferenced, and there was a lot of its palatability, but they ended up they chose Anameka for the following reasons. Out of all those plants, Anameka was born, so it does have a higher palatability, considerably higher palatability compared to Old Man Saltbush, and other shrubs, of course. Now, I will say, and I was told by Dr. Hayley Norman, so Anameka is her love child. If you do any research, you'll find her name. It's her baby. Anameka actually wasn't the most preferenced by the sheep. It was like the second best in the queue. But she said they didn't want to release the one that the sheep smashed down to nothing, because you don't want to plant that. They're just constantly wrecking, and so it's interesting. Anameka was next in the queue, but better for lots of reasons. It has more plant biomass production compared to normal Old Man Saltbush. It's chalk and cheese. It's more vigorous. There's far more plant biomass. The leaves are bigger. If you look at comparatively, and I probably should have put a slide with two of them beside each other. If you look at normal Old Man Saltbush and then you look at an Anameka plant, chalk and cheese. There's high levels of protein, so up to 20% higher. Rich in minerals, so sodium, calcium, magnesium. It's ideal fodder for during dry times predominantly, so in drought periods, filling the autumn feed gap. It's a summer active plant. It's always going to have more leaf and biomass over summer. That's when it's kicking into gear, when everything else is looking pretty ordinary. But it can be rotationally grazed and utilised. It can be rotationally grazed and utilised with understory pasture as a full system as well. So a lot of people are doing inter-row cropping with Anameka. It allows multiple grazing cycles per year. So it's not if you don't use it, you lose it. You can use it once a year, you can graze it over summer, that's great, but you can get multiple grazes a year, and the more you graze Anameka plants, the better growth you'll get. It's if you can use it a couple of times a year, you'll see a difference. It grows on saline, marginal and poor soils, and all soils, all soil types. It'll grow on sand, it'll grow in loam, it'll grow on clay. It's just all about establishment on the different soil types though. So it has a 20 plus year lifespan. Now, it hasn't been around long enough to prove, it hasn't been around for 50 years for CSIRO to say, yep, it lasts 50 years, but it'll live as long as a normal old man saltbush plant. So that answers that question. It has faster and better establishment after planting compared to old man saltbush. So we've done contract planting jobs where we've done a 50-50 split because the farmer's not sure whether Anameka's going to be the better option, and then we've done the old man saltbush, and we've seen such better establishment and faster establishment of the Anameka. It definitely takes quicker. It really does just want to grow. So with Anameka, CSIRO trials have shown that lambs grazing Anameka maintain or even gain weight in poor paddock conditions. CSIRO have also found that ewes grazing Anameka during pregnancy have improved condition scores and lamb survival rates. Anameka delivers green fodder biomass even during extended dry spells and poor seasons. So I said earlier, Anameka is a summer active plant. So Anameka also provides a strategic feed reserve, helping during dry seasons, minimalising the need for supplementary feed, and even destocking in some scenarios. So you can sort of think of Anameka as a living haystack. It has so fast early growth of Anameka can see the plants being fully grazed as soon as 12 to 18 months post-planting. You can graze it. If you were to plant this winter, you would be able to do a light graze, say next autumn, but the key word there is just the first graze has to be light. You can't go overboard. I wouldn't go more than 50% defoliation. You just don't want to put a new plant under stress in its first summer. But after that first summer, when that plant bounces back the following summer, we've seen Anameka plants smash back to sticks in the ground, and looked at them and thought, they're never going to grow, they're never going to come back. And then all of a sudden, the buds come and they're back. So they're pretty tough once they're established. Anameka does establish well on saline scalds and degraded paddocks, helping to restore productivity over time. So turning paddocks that aren't as productive into something that you're getting something for is a great option. As I said earlier, though, it really is about establishment. You can't just bang a seedling in a crappy soil and think it's going to grow. So that comes down to ground prep and then post-watering, but after that, they will grow really well. You should always have fresh, easily accessible water in Anameka plantations. So in the paddock, as stock will want to drink more water when they are feeding on Anameka. It's a positive thing though, because it aids better digestion, better rumen function, and assisting to flush excess salt and urea from their systems, as well as encouraging stock to use the water points more regularly as well. So, but just it is something to keep in mind. Make sure your water points are easily accessible and fresh water. So basically, Anameka, each plant is grown from cuttings to keep it true to type and consistent. So every single Anameka plant is a genetic clone of the mother plant Anameka. They're all grown from cuttings. There's no variation. They will all grow the same way. Anameka has faster establishment compared to standard old man saltbush, I mentioned earlier. It grows well in saline, degraded soils, helping reclaim unproductive farmland. The sweeter the soil though, the better the growth and the biomass. We have seen if you put Anameka in a beautiful, rich, loamy soil and it has all the great conditions, you'll have bigger leaves and more biomass. You will still get a great plant in a heavier soil, and every year we'll see something different. But yeah, if you can pick your sweeter ground, you'll get better growth. It does act as a drought reserve or green pick when the pasture dries off. So as I said, think of it as a living haystack. It supports carbon sequestration, being a deep-rooted perennial. Anameka contributes to long-term carbon storage and improved soil organic matter. So the plant structure of Anameka helps to stabilise eroding soils as well. It works well with inter-row pastures and native grasses for a whole feed system approach. So a lot of people are sowing inter-row crops, as I mentioned earlier, and having that full system there for feed. Anameka provides minerals like sodium and calcium that support digestion and reduce the need for supplements. And Anameka obviously provides shelter and protection over winter. We get asked all the time, I've got this paddock, it's X amount of hectares, how many Anameka do I need? How long is a piece of string? There's no right or wrong, and it's got to work for you. Think about access. So do you want to fang a quad around and muster sheep out, and do you need to turn around, and do you need to run a tractor up the guts? Do you need to spray? Like, you've got to think about that, because once the plants are there, you don't want to have to push them out. So that is one thing to think about. So block planting back in the 60s and 70s, it gave saltbush a pretty bad rep. It's sort of become overgrown, hard to manage. You know, normally old man saltbush can get as big as 3 metres. Some of those plants can get huge, and once they get away, you know, we've seen people come through with slashing machines and running them over, and it becomes a management issue and harbours rabbits and pests. So we, because we do contract planning, we help a lot of people configure their paddocks and their rows, and not many people are doing block planting anymore for all of those reasons. Every now and again we do see people do block planting, but it's more, they might have a small paddock, they just want to fill it up as a feed option and then pull them out. But yeah, we're not doing big giant paddocks of block planting anymore. Mostly we see a lot of, some people do single rows, and that might be a space issue. Mostly though, double and triple rows, so a row of 2 or 3 side by side. Now our planter puts those rows at roughly 2.5 to 3 metres between each row. Now Anameka is a lower growing, it doesn't get as big as normal old man saltbush, so it is a lower growing, more spreading size shrub, so that's a really good sort of row spacing. And then there's normally 2 to 3 metres between each plant within the row as well, so that's how you get your dense feed lines. For smaller paddocks, as I said, some block planting is still happening. Smaller block planting, you normally get about 1,500 stems per hectare, but that does go down to 100 stems per hectare, just depending on what space you want to leave in your inter-row area, if any. So there's some numbers if anyone's doing maths in their head. In a situation where you have a triple row config with a 20 metre inter-row gap, so 20 metres between each line, you'll be looking at about 500 stems per hectare. In areas where paddocks are considerably larger, i.e. this area, the hay plains, you might want to do a triple or quad row, and then you could leave 100, 200, 300, 400 metre gap if you wanted to. If you've got the space and you want to leave that gap, you can. It just all depends on your paddock size. So costs, pricing, how do I get it? So they're growing from cuttings, which is labour intensive. So the seedlings are $1.20 per plant plus GST when you get smaller volumes. And then for larger bulk orders over 10,000, they're $1 per plant plus GST. Anameka are available from April through to September each year, and then we do it all again. We do recommend pre-ordering if you are interested, especially in bigger volumes. We do sell out. And we can't we've got what we've got. We can't, all of the Anameka we have for sale this year, as much as we encourage people to pre-order, a lot of people get in and, it's a good year or it's rained, I might give it a go. But we've already got the plants that we've got because they were propagated last year. We take pre-orders for the following year during spring and summer. Anameka can be picked up from our nursery at Wakool. We also can deliver Anameka using our plant trailer for larger orders, so just contact us to discuss. Otherwise, we do send Anameka mailing boxes all around Australia, except for WA and Tas. The boxes hold 100 or 250 plants if you just want to give it a trial. And we also offer contract planting of Anameka as well. That is the Anameka spiel. Thank you for listening. If anyone's interested in Anameka, come and have a chat. I've actually brought over, there's some Anameka seedlings in tubes, and then there's a couple of other trays free. If anyone wants any plants, come and help yourself. And if anyone's got any questions, feel free to pick my brain. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thanks, Stacey. Now, we've got Owen Huggins. Where are you, Owen? Here he is. Good on you. Owen's just going to have a couple of words. He's a landholder that's planted Anameka. Owen and Helen own Wood Park Pole out near Jerilderie. And Owen's, he's got a bit of experience. So I just thought it'd be good for him just to have a bit of just a quick...
There you go. We're about 30 k's northwest of Jerilderie on typical clay country, and we're very attracted to the concept of putting saltbush in. Produces a lovely little micro-environment, obviously produces a lot more shelter across the paddocks, and the concept of having what is essentially a perennial plant that's very responsive to rainfall at any time of the year. It doesn't require fertiliser. Doesn't require spraying, was something we're really interested in. So over the last 2 years, we've had two planting sessions, total about 40,000 Anameka, and it's been very successful. As I speak, in what is now a very dry autumn, most likely a dry winter, it's great to have young stock really enjoying some fresh green feed that otherwise has to be carted in at great cost on the truck. So from a livestock management viewpoint, it's really good. Last year we put 30,000 in quite late in the season, in August, watered at planting. I think I watered it because it was an incredibly dry, hot period afterwards. I watered twice afterwards. And it's a huge success. I think something better than, much more than 90% success rate. Those plants now are currently about 450 mils high, about 45 centimetres high, very bushy, very palatable leaves. Last evening, in fact, we're bringing young sheep through that paddock, and they couldn't wait to open their mouths. It's clearly very attractive to sheep. And another paddock, the original planting, has young rams in, which are doing extremely well. What we do notice is, because our young sheep actually haven't had that experience, they haven't actually eaten saltbush before, they will go through the plant area and they'll take all this creeping saltbush, other grasses, then they'll start on saltbush. Once they get on that saltbush, they really put it away. And I must say, I do notice weight gains are really good. Weight gains are really good. And the thing that we're really pleased about is that when those sheep come out of that area, we won't need a lot of rain for that leaf to begin redeveloping again. So we truly do have a very low cost perennial plant that's nutritious to sheep, and we also value it greatly from a viewpoint of for lambing ewes, shelter. We've all seen lambs sitting in behind a bush on a cold windy day. It would be a fabulous area for lambing ewes in, and so that is right throughout the season. We have this opportunity to, when we get a small rainfall event in December, we'll get a result where most times you won't get anything. So it's a strategic long-term view that we're taking, and we're very pleased with what we've done. It's been a great success. And we have another planting this year with an autumn rain. Coming soon, I hope.
Absolutely. It's on its way. Thank you very much, Owen. That's great. We'll keep rolling along. Thanks, Owen. And thanks, Stacey. And don't forget, we've got some free plants over at Stacey's little stand. The CSIRO boys are heading to Canberra, and Caroline. Thank you so much for coming out, and all the best for that trial. And if you can extend it for another 10 years, that'd be fantastic.